I sat at the bar, drinking and half listening to the music. Between songs, the man explained that the music was all his own. In his late 20s, he had a face with no distinguishing characteristics, and he wore glasses with black plastic frames. His outfit consisted of jeans, high lace-up boots, and a checked flannel work shirt that hung loose around his waist. The type of music was hard to define, something that might have been called folk in the old days, the Japanese version of folk. Simple chords, simple melodies, and unremarkable words. Not the kind of stuff I'd go out of my way to listen to. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have paid any attention to music like that. I would have had my whiskey, paid my bill, and left the place. But that night I was chilled right to the bone, and had no intention of going outside again under any circumstances, until I had warmed up all the way through. I drank one straight and ordered another. I made no attempt to remove my coat or my scarf. When the bartender asked if I wanted a snack, I ordered some cheese and ate a single slice. I tried to think, but I couldn't get my head to work right. I didn't even know what it was that I wanted to think about. I was a vacant room. Inside, the music produced only a dry, hollow echo. When the man finished singing, there was a scattered applause, neither overly enthusiastic nor entirely perfunctory. There were no more than 10 or 15 customers in the place. The fellow stood and bowed. He seemed to make some kind of funny remarks that caused a few of the customers to laugh. I called the bartender and ordered my third whiskey. Then finally I took my coat and my scarf off. "That concludes my show for tonight," announced the singer. He seemed to pause and survey the room. "But there must be some of you here tonight who didn't like my songs. For you, I've got a little something extra. I don't do this all the time, so you should consider yourselves very lucky." He set his guitar on the floor, and from the guitar case took a single thick white candle. He lit it with a match, dripped some wax into a plate, and stood the candle up. Then, looking like the Greek philosopher, he held the plate aloft. "Can I have the lights down, please?" One of the employees dimmed the lights somewhat. "A little darker, if you don't mind." Now the place became much darker, and the candle flame stood out clearly. Palms wrapped around my whiskey glass to warm it, I kept my eyes on the man and his candle. "As you are well aware," the man continued, his voice soft but penetrating, "in the course of life we experience many kinds of pains, pains of the body and pains of the heart. I know I have experienced pain in many different forms in my life, and I'm sure you have too. In most cases, though, I'm sure you found it very difficult to convey the truth of that pain to another person, to explain it in words. People say that only they themselves can understand the pain they are feeling. But is this true? I, for one, do not believe that it is. If, before our eyes, we see someone who is truly suffering, we do sometimes feel his or her suffering and pain as our own. This is the power of empathy. Am I making myself clear?" He broke off and looked around the room once again. The reason that people sing songs for other people is because they want to have the power to arouse empathy, to break free of the narrow shell of the self and share their pain and joy with others. This is not an easy thing to do, of course. And so tonight, as a kind of experiment, I want you to experience a simpler, more physical kind of empathy. Everyone in the place was hushed now, all eyes fixed on the stage. Amid the silence, the man stared off into space, as if to insert a pause or to reach a state of mental concentration. Then, without a word, he held his left hand over the lighted candle. Little by little, he brought the palm closer and closer to the flame. Someone in the audience made a sound like a sigh or a moan. You could see the tip of the flame burning the man's palm. You could almost hear the sizzle of the flesh. A woman released a hard little scream. Everyone else just watched in frozen horror. The man endured the pain, his face distorted in agony. What the hell was this? Why did he have to do such a stupid, senseless thing. I felt my mouth going dry. After 5 or 6 seconds of this, he slowly removed his hand from the flame and set the dish with the candle in it on the floor. Then he clasped his hands together, the right and left palms pressed against each other. As you have seen tonight, ladies and gentlemen, pain can actually burn a person's flesh, said the man. His voice sounded exactly as it had earlier, quiet, steady, cool. No trace of suffering remained on his face. Indeed, it had been replaced by a faint smile, and the pain that must have been there, you have been able to feel it as if it were your own. That is the power of empathy. The man slowly parted his clasped hands. From between that he produced a thin red scarf which he opened for all to see. Then he stretched his palms out towards the audience. There were no burns at all. A moment of silence followed, and then people expressed their relief in wild applause. The lights came up and the chatter of voices replaced the tension that had filled the room. As if the whole thing had never happened, the man put his guitar into the case, stepped down from the stage, and disappeared.